You're watching this on a computer screen at the moment. When was the last time you went outside? And I'm not talking about going outside to get to your car in order to go to work, or going outside to take public transportation. I'm talking about really breathing in that fresh air. Did you know that approximately 35% of adults in the United States have a vitamin D deficiency? Go outside, explore, exercise, take in the morning sun, go for a run around the neighborhood, treat your heart with care and it'll treat you. And as you run, remember to soak it all in. Expose yourself to the sun. You know you need that vitamin D, viewer, and you would trust me, right? Never mind the wrinkling of your skin, you're not getting any older. It's all in your head. Soon one day, you'll be a husk of your former self. UV damage taking a toll on your skin, the tumors. Don't worry about it. You're a growing boy. Going outside is very important. The cancer on your skin, just cut it off. Just cut it all off. You need that vitamin D. You need to go outside more. You can't just spend all your time in front of the computer. You can't just. Today, I'll be talking about Pikmin, both 1 and 2, a game released by the Japanese salaryman company, Nintendo. Now you're probably thinking, Noona, what the fuck? You went from reviewing a survival horror game to an experimental 90s JRPG, what the fuck is this baby shit? Have you ever poured boiling water on a bunch of ants, or lit several on fire just to see what happens? Anyway, there's something about the survival of these creatures in nature that makes it somewhat fascinating to watch. Despite everything, they care about nothing more than the survival of their colony. Story is that old Shiggy himself came up with the idea for Pikmin by a blooming interest in gardening and staring at a bunch of ants and probably burning them with a magnifying glass. This idea was eventually disproven, and it turns out that old Shiggy himself really just made that story up because he's Nintendo's golden goose. The actual influence came from the GameCube's ability to produce tons of models, with a tech demo from Space World 2000 called Super Mario 120. The game was originally about playing God looking over two characters named Adam and Eve. You'd watch them grow and mingle together, but after discovering how fucking boring it is to just sit by and watch people exist together, they scrapped the idea. Back to the ants. In spite of suffering, losing their brothers in arms in the harsh and bitter course of nature, they continue on. There's something compelling about them, and that's what kind of draws me to Pikmin. The game is considered a real-time strategy game, and it's contextualized well. Not many other games have a setting similar to Pikmin. I first played this game when I was a child, and the world of Pikmin fascinated me, and a lot of thought and care was put into making Pikmin feel like an actual snapshot of nature. And that snapshot, the cruelty, the anxiety, the bitterness that nature provides is the reason why this is one of my favorite franchises. Story. You play as Olimar, a Hocotate delivery man who's on vacation before his personal spacecraft gets struck down by an asteroid and he crashes on an unknown planet. It's said that the Pikmin planet is Earth in a period of time after humans have gone extinct. No one knows how many years have passed between human extinction and the events of Pikmin, but Earth is now inhabited by all sorts of different creatures. Olimar is canonically an inch tall. He finds himself smaller than many of the plants we're familiar with. He's at the level of a bug. He wakes up to find his ship destroyed, 30 parts across 30 days, and if he fails to repair his ship within 30 days, he'll die. But being one man, he can't possibly salvage the parts necessary to survive. He needs to rely on something. He needs to rely on someone. Slave labor. Pikmin are an alien race resembling carrots. They're drawn to Olimar's spacesuit light and follow his every command. There are several types across the game. There are docile species of plant creature that work similar to ants, working to provide for the colony. They come from a mothership hive called the Onion that helps produce additional Pikmin seeds to continue to grow their population. Olimar's main form of interaction is by being able to throw them and whistling them to his side, enabling them to reach new places and attacking enemies or corralling them like the special needs children that they are. The first game keeps it fairly simple, introducing 3 races: nose-havers, ear-havers, and mouth-havers. Nose-havers are characterized by their bright red skin. They offer the highest attack power and have an immunity to fire. In gameplay, these tend to be your frontline fighters. Ear-havers are characterized by these These are my people. We share a similar pigment. They're somehow lighter than the rest and can be thrown higher. While they have electric immunity in the future games, the developers weren't able to figure out how to integrate electricity into the gameplay loop of the first, and as such, yellow Pikmin are defined by their ability to carry bomb rocks, explosives, if you will. The limited resource and power behind them is essential to the first game. Mouth havers are worthless and should be left in the pond to drown. With their 3 skin colors in tow, Olimar can set off to repair his ship. There are 3 potential endings, 2 where he can survive and 1 where he fucking dies. Anyway, he leaves the Pikmin to their own devices and lets them get slaughtered by the other wildlife as he returns home. Pikmin 2 opens up with his debt collection, and he and his co-captain Louie return to the Pikmin planet in order to collect treasures. As the adventures continue, Olimar encounters 2 new skin colors for him to enslave. The first are purple-haired Pikmin, obese Americans trained to use their weight effectively in battle, understanding the rewarding, honest work of labor. Purple Pikmin act as your main frontline in the second game in exchange for being slow and fat. The second are white Pikmin, beady-eyed cunts that have an immunity to poison and are poisonous to enemies. They're smaller, faster, and generally act as the best utility color in the game. The story is fairly bare bones as far as both games go. Both are contextualized in such a way where you're collecting parts or treasure and exploring. The first game does characterize Olimar more, and you discover that he's a very relatable family man. He's endearing, coming to terms and gripping at what he can to survive. Gameplay. With your miniature army in tow, you can set off to collect different parts and treasures. As Pikmin plays like a basic real-time strategy game, the main focus of the game is puzzle solving for parts or treasure, collecting resources to build your army, and fighting off animals in the Pikmin world. The first game focuses on Olimar's survival across 30 days. Days are roughly 13.5 minutes. Pikmin as a series has one overarching puzzle to answer one question. How can I be as productive as possible while maintaining a high production of Pikmin and overcoming hurdles? You can only have 100 Pikmin on the field at once. Do you know how to do fractions well enough to split your attention and have multiple actions going on at once? Obstacles include enemies, walls, bridges, bodies of water, and your own incompetence. Strength in numbers is a phrase commonly associated with people coming together and having combined strength. After all, a stick by itself can snap in half, but a bundle of sticks together is strong. Pikmin, for as small and fragile as they are, can come together and overcome most obstacles. If you've ever watched a horde of ants pick apart a dead animal, you know exactly what I mean. One Pikmin is certainly capable and can probably kill something small. The likelihood of his untimely demise is fairly high. 3 Pikmin are 3 times as strong and have better success at killing said small creatures. But 100 can overwhelm an enemy, and you can go toe-to-toe with some bigger, spookier enemies if approached correctly. And if someone dies, he's replaceable. Anyone and everyone is replaceable in the face of beating the odds. Expendable is a great way to describe your army. If one man falls, conscript another, and your fallen enemies, turn them into the nutrients necessary to produce more Pikmin. From birth to death, they're meant to work for you. It's a matter of survival after all, and Olimar is willing to do anything to see his family again. The war machine needs warm bodies to keep itself fueled. Pikmin are nothing more than the worthless grunts necessary to do your busy work. Pikmin will fight and die for beliefs that they don't understand, ideologies that they don't believe in, but your leadership is important. You give them purpose. As long as a man carrying the name Big Boss continues to live, soldiers will have a purpose to keep fighting, to live. You've given them a place for conflict, a reason to live. It doesn't matter who lives and who dies, our fight will continue. The loser will be liberated from the battlefield, and the survivor will live out the rest of his days as a soldier. Conflict breeds tragedy, and in that tragedy you create purpose. You create victims that can be taught knowledge to fight the next war. An endless cycle of a reason to live. The game is very simple, with much of the controls involving Olimar sending a swarm over to a wall or to an enemy. The Pikmin will do the rest. If an item is out of reach, you can throw Pikmin towards something. Despite this, there are environmental hazards that need to be overcome using the strengths of each Pikmin type. Each Pikmin has an immunity and a strength to them, with only purple Pikmin breaking this rule. Whites for poison, reds for fire, blues for water, yellow for electricity, and purples for the natural metabolic rate of Americans. Which, Olimar's main form of interaction is throwing Pikmin. Instead of commanding your army and having them fight with reasonable means such as tools or technology like guns, you physically throw your troops into the meat grinder. You can use this to place Pikmin at a higher elevation or reach locations that you physically can't reach. While most enemies, like the spotty Bulborb, are on the ground, you can generally fight them by swarming them. Flying or tall enemies, like the beady Longlegs, require you to throw your Pikmin upwards in order to reach its main body. The second game also introduces Louie, your second captain. He serves as a second playable character, enabling you to multitask and micromanage better with 2 small squads split between the 2 captains, instead of having to run across the whole map as Olimar. With arms the size of a masturbatory linebacker, Olimar and Louie embark against nature itself, surviving against all odds, for the sake of money. There are 5 areas in the first game and 4 in the second. Each area isn't particularly large and each presents new challenges. Different biomes require different approaches to be as efficient as possible, and each location has different flora and fauna, giving each a unique atmosphere. Each brings about a similar but unique set of enemies to fight. The wildlife of the game are varied in size and weight. Most are hostile, but some are docile. Kill them and take their corpses for additional nutrients. The world of Pikmin is vast and natural. Enemies and monsters roam, and sometimes their children cry for help. Combat is fairly straightforward. You swarm enemies, with some requiring extra inputs like throwing Pikmin towards them. Pikmin latch onto or attack from the ground by bashing their heads into enemies. Enemies attack by biting, stabbing, swallowing, throwing rocks, setting your army on fire, electrocuting them, crushing, or other possible means. Typically, enemies only have one set of abilities, and combat isn't too difficult. The difficulty of the game really comes more from exploration, productivity, and the relentless nature of caves. When you kill an enemy, Pikmin often carry them back to their nest. This isn't the only means of resources to produce Pikmin. The levels often have pellets scattered around that act as crystallized nectar that produces additional Pikmin seeds. The second game introduces caves, which are procedurally generated caves that you can plunder for more treasure. Typically, each floor has a randomly generated layout scattered with monsters and traps. Traps range from randomly spawning enemies, elemental hazards, rocks, and bombs that drop out of the sky. Each cave might have different themes to it, and generally tend to lean towards specific elemental hazards in its design. The submerged castle, for example, is completely underwater, and it turns into a fucking horror game. Despite how calm and soothing my voice might sound, my blood pressure rises every time I play through Pikmin 2. This game is a borderline anxiety simulator. Each cave culminates in a final floor where you go toe-to-toe against a boss. Bosses are a final exam of coming up with improvisational tactics, reacting accordingly, or figuring out the main boss's gimmick. These stand as the highest echelon of enemies the game has to offer, and are eventually thrown in as common enemies you see in the game's final caves. Caves finish off with character abilities that essentially make Olimar and Louie invincible by the time the game finishes. Presentation. Pikmin released as one of the earliest titles in the GameCube's library, and while textures nowadays are fairly dated, the game still looks really wonderful. There's a level of photorealism that makes this game shine when viewed from a distance. Even if the individual character and enemy models look fairly dated as far as textures go, the environments do a great job at setting up the atmosphere. There's a vibrancy to the world that's not too overprocessed like something produced in Unreal 4 that lights the world. It's like, wow, I'm really there, able to eat the leaves off the bushes in my backyard, able to eat the cockroaches that have entered my home. Pikmin's soundtrack evokes a lot of emotions. Much of the overall themes are comfy, it's whimsical, it's goofy, and it's lackadaisical. It can be dangerous, it's a lot of things, and I'm amazed at how many different emotions Pikmin's soundtrack can evoke. The overall themes for most areas have multiple parts to them, from the captain you're playing as, to the time of day, to whether you're in battle. The Pikmin soundtrack goes all over the place. The final boss of the first game breaks out an organ. The second game has individual themes for each of the caves, from the majestic nature of the Bulblax Kingdom to the bumbling clumsiness of the Citadel spiders, to the absolute schizo and horrific backdrop of the submerged castle. I genuinely really enjoy listening to and being weirded out by this game's soundtrack. It's been 22 years since this game was released, and I first played it when I was 6. But having grown into the autistic, paste-eating, yellow-skinned man-child that I am, I recognize that Pikmin is the ultimate simulation of learning to enjoy the great outdoors. Doing chores like I'm playing Animal Crossing, watching bugs scramble as I set them on fire, it's a game that's not for everyone. But it's special. A lot of games tend to create beautiful and thoughtfully crafted environments, but there's something about the world of Pikmin. Whether it's the dopamine release of being as productive as possible, the sobering reminder that Olimar can die isolated and alone, far away from his family, or the dehumanizing aspect of how you view life once a few too many Pikmin are killed off as time goes on. 22 years later, and I still find myself thoroughly entertained by a game of watching plant people carry things to a ball. You can find this game on the Nintendo GameCube and the Nintendo Wii, but since those are lost to time, you can find it easily by... Hold on, I think I see someone outside my door. Yeah? He said he was a Nintendo lawyer. Anyway, you can probably find an ISO of this game online, but if you can't find this game, you can find Pikmin 3 and soon to be Pikmin 4 on the Nintendo Switch. But you know, I would rather kill my firstborn child than pay Nintendo $60. I can assure you that Pikmin 3 is a good game, and if this video made you interested in any way and you own the man-child console, I would recommend giving it a playthrough. Just a quick update, Pikmin 1 and 2 have been released for the Nintendo Switch, and if that's your cup of tea, I would recommend getting it. Granted, it's $50 US, so do with that information what you will. Thank you so much for watching. There'll be more content to come. Please check out my links in the description and check out my streams on Twitch. I recently debuted and I'm excited to try new things going forward. Take it easy, and as always, get the fuck off my roof. Have a good one.
Watch out!